For this lesson, I'm going to walk you guys through setting up some basic lighting. As you can see here, I got a little corner of a room set up with just a sofa chair, end table, coffee table, and a lamp. What I'm thinking is I'm going to work with two light sources here. I think there'd probably be some sort of overhead lighting, and there'd obviously be some light coming from the lamp. You can see I have a camera in the scene, which is what I'm using on my viewport. Once you add a camera, which you can do from the Create tab, just create and then hit camera, you can place it, and then through the viewport you can, instead of the perspective view, which is commonly here, you can just select whichever camera you have created. There you create lights by going to the Create tab, and the third one over is lights. And now you have two options, photometric and standard. Photometric is a bit more advanced, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. We're going to be working with standard lighting. Photometric is a better solution when you're going for hyper-realistic lighting situations. But again, for this exercise, go ahead and pick standard. From there you can see the different object types that you have available to you. Before we do that, I want to make sure our viewports are set up. So since I have the camera here, I want this, the point here is to try and make this a realistic representation excuse me, of the lighting scheme. So you obviously want to have it on realistic, but then you can also go down to lighting and shadows and control how a lighting is represented here. I wouldn't recommend enabling all these lights and shadows unless you have the hardware to support it. You want to have a solid video card and a good processor. If you're someone who's already struggling with 3D Studio Max on your system, I wouldn't recommend enabling all these, which isn't, it's not the end of the world, because we can still just hit render at any time and see what our lighting looks like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a target spot. Target spots work very similarly to the camera, where if you just click and drag, the first click will set your light, and the drag will set where it's pointing towards. And you can edit this at any time by just going to the select object and move menu. As you can see, it's not quite centered on my objects, so I'm going to go ahead, and you have to move both the target and the light separately. Let's see. Let's go ahead and try and get this right in the middle. Alright, so now I have it centered on my scene, but it doesn't quite, catch everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the light and go to Modify, and then you can see I have a lot more options here. What I want to do is I'm going to go under Spotlight Parameters, and I have two things to adjust here. I have Hotspot, Beam, and Fall Off Field. A spotlight basically consists of two elements. There's an outer ring and an inner ring, and the inner ring is the hotspot, and the outer ring is fall off. The farther apart those two are, it creates kind of a gradient blend between the two. So as you can see here, let's just set these both to. You can see that both those values are very close to each other, and the edge of the spotlight is very sharp. So if I move that hot fall off out, you can see that it starts to fade off a little bit more, right? But I want to make this a lot bigger, so let's blend it out there. So that's going to kind of operate as my main light in my room. You can also adjust the intensity, which is under intensity/color. Now, these operate as a multiplier, right? And you can, the thing you want to keep in mind with the multiplier is no matter how many lights you have in your scene, when you add up all the multipliers, they should not go above 2. If they do, you're going to really kind of blow out your scene. So I'm just going to, let's just start this one at around 0.5 for now. Alright, and I'm going to click on render production right here to kind of get an idea of what we look like. And the mistake I made here is I have the wrong viewport selected, so I'm going to select that one, hit render again, and that's kind of what we're looking at here, right? So now you probably noticed that we don't have any shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my light again, and I'm going to click on under shadows, just click on. Now this is where we talk about there's two types of shadows, shadow map versus ray traced shadows, that we're going to kind of focus on right now. I will touch on area shadows a little bit later, but those of you who play a lot of video games, if you notice on higher end PCs, you see that the shadows are very nice and crisp. Those are most likely ray trace shadows, because ray trace shadows are vector. Shadow map are actually pixel based. They're more like raster graphics, right? So you can go in and adjust those, but typically in like video game situations where you really want a really high frame rate, you want it to be able to be updated quickly, and shadow maps are typically better for that. If you have ray trace shadows on, it's going to take a little bit longer to render, but it looks better. So let's just kind of go with, I'm going to show you first shadow map, and then I'm going to render it, and I did it again. So you can see that the edges are a bit soft, and when I close that and I change it to, oops, I don't have my light selected, a ray traced, and render. You can see the shadows are nice and crisp, right? Since it's a relatively simple scene, you're not going to see a lot of difference in render time at this moment. The things to remember also, when you use shadow maps, they don't actually take into consideration transparency. So if you have semi-transparent objects, it's not going to consider that when it makes a render. So the option that's kind of between these two is area light. So here I'm going to select it, and I'm going to select area shadows under it. And what this does is, realistically, when an object creates a shadow, it actually starts crisp closer to the shadow and it kind of fades out. Whereas ray traced is sharp and shadow map is kind of blurry. This kind of creates a blend between the two. So if I enable that, and I keep doing that, you can see that it starts nice and crisp and it fades out, and that's a bit more realistic. So we're gonna keep that. I'm gonna actually at this moment move my light up a little bit because I don't like those dark corners. Alright, so there we have kind of a basic scene. Now the last type of light we're going to look at is called an Omni Light. So you can see in the scene, well, first I'm going to use an Omni Light to create light coming from this lamp. So I'm going to go to Create and Omni. And right now it has area shadows. I'm just going to select shadow map for now. And I'm just going to click on here, and you can see that it creates this little light, and I need to move it to be in the center. Let's select it from the list and let's be easier. Okay. So I'm going to move this Omni Light right in the middle, and I'm going to hit render production. And I did it. So you can see that now there's a little bit of light coming from the lamp. We can mess with a few different types, but you know, obviously you can go into the settings and make, let's grab that light again. And go to modify, and let's bump that intensity up maybe a little bit. And again, you don't want the sum of all your lights to equal more than, let's show you the difference when I have it up to 1. So now you can see it not only affects the light around here, it also helps to kind of fill out some of these shadows. As you can see here, you know, it's pretty good, but a lot of these areas are still pretty dark, which wouldn't be that way in a room. So what you can do next is kind of place some of these Omni lights around the room. And I'm going to kind of tackle this area right here. And I don't need this to be very bright because I'm just trying to soften some of these shadows. So now if I render this, you can see that it's way too much. It's completely blown out all my shadows. So I'm going to select that light and I'm going to turn down the intensity, you know, probably down to, let's try it that low. So that helped to soften up, you know, some of those lights, and you know, I could place a few in there. Typically, they call this a fill light when they're actually lighting a specific subject. Now, the last thing I want to show you is the light lister, and the light lister is, you know what, I've completely forgotten where the light lister is, so let's find it. I'm going to open up my 3D Studio Max help, and I'm going to search for light lister. I'm going to find it. It is under configuration, so I'm going to go back. And I have apparently misread that. Oh, I'm sorry, it's under Tools. So we're going to go under Tools. And there it is, Light Lister. So basically what this does is it allows you to make general changes to all the lights at once. So like here you can see that my multipliers are listed, and you can see that I'm nowhere near 2. So here, like I said, I can sit here and adjust each of these individually to kind of give me the result that I'm looking for.